The puppets were built by McKinnon and Saunders up in Manchester, who are the premier puppet makers in the world, and they've been involved with most stop-motion projects that have been going on for the past 20 years.
The puppets are probably 50% artistry and 50% technicality and hard work. There's a great deal of creative input that goes into the puppets, just in the way that they're sculpted, the way that they're painted, the way that they're costumed.
We're creating 200 puppets, and they've all got to look like they come from the same world. So we need people with an artistic background and great creative skills, but they've got to be prepared to work within the design and work with the designers to ensure that everything looks like it's come from the Corpse Bride's world.
Tim had a very clear idea of how he wanted the puppets to look, and he'd been working on designs and sketches and paintings before we met up with him. These were great. I mean, we were excited about being asked to work on the project.
Tim designed most of the characters on his own, and then we had a character designer named Carlos Grangel, who works out of Spain.
Carlos is he's a great designer. My sketches are often quite crude, but he was really sensitive about trying to understand what the feel and the look of it was and to expand upon it.
Every character has his own personality, and personality dictates shape, balance, and rhythm. So every character has his own silhouette. So what is important is that we can recognize every single character when we see it on the screen. And they are puppets, so they have to be really graphic and really stylized. So we had to create many shapes.
The lead characters have mechanical faces, which is something it's been done a bit with commercials and things and a few other projects, but it's never really been pushed to this level before that I'm aware of, as far as having the mechanics be small enough to fit within the scale of these puppets.
Puppets fall into many different categories, so a background character will just be able to sort of move around the set and maybe have one or two very simple facial expressions, but the key characters, Victor, Victoria and Corpse Bride, have to carry the film.
Who's this? Who is she? I'm his wife.
What Mike was really keen to do was to give the animator more flexibility, so the animator can judge how far they want to push each element on the face. It's much more of their own performance, really, at the end of the day.
Hopefully that gives us a much more expressive look than, say, replacement animation or something like that, which is a little more locked off and predetermined. So I've been really happy with the level of expression we've been able to get.
We've invested a lot of time and effort trying to get those characters as articulate as possible. And what we've ended up doing is making these very complicated heads with little gears in that will open and close the jaw and pull pulleys that will enable the character to smile and to frown.
They've really pushed what they can do with puppets in these heads, especially the amount of mechanics they've got inside there for the size of head that the characters have.
They do such beautiful work. I mean, these puppets are very sensitive and textural and really like Swiss watches, you know, they're made so nicely.
Tim's characters are always sort of a challenge to build as a three-dimensional model. They tend to be rather tall and skinny, and they tend to have very tiny feet. So we had to look at the different ways of engineering the joint system that we use inside the models, and then how they would actually support the weight of the character. The difficulty is that the characters' heads are about 25–30 centimeters away from the floor. So an animator is reaching up all the time, trying to manipulate a head, and there's an awful lot of leverage on that model, so it has to be secured well to the set.
We've spent, I guess now, 4 or 5 months developing different rigs. We'd be making things that would help to create the movement. There's an awful lot of puppets that have costumes, and what we've done is we've made this so it sits inside the costume puppet, and the animators can access with a tiny little bar to turn these parts, create a little motion, vertical motion, so the puppets can bounce like they're walking, but they don't have any feet. So all this is hidden inside the dress. The bride's a very difficult character. There's so many complicated parts to it. The veil alone's taken weeks of research and trying out different methods of using all sorts of things that were hidden, wires, hard rigs, sort of solid metal rigs, connecting up to it, and then changing the different materials that the veil's made out of.
Fabric, that's a pretty tough thing. Fabric's very difficult to control. A lot of testing has been involved with that.
There's a series of wires that go through the fabric which are virtually invisible.
Don't want to use too much wire because it fights you. You've got to have a certain kind of wire, sometimes no wire. Sometimes we have rigs blowing through or moving through the dress to look like blowing wind.
We've got a few shots where the wind's blowing and it's blowing a costume. This is a clear shape that when it's underneath you won't see this. You won't see this shape at all, but it'll create the sort of effect of the wind blowing through it, and then it can be animated down. So it's like the wind's trailing off and feathering out.
For the main characters on Corpse Bride, we've made 14 Corpse Bride, 14 Victors, and 13 Victorias. The multiplicity of characters is not to do with their disposability, but more to do with the fact that because the animation process is so slow, they have to have multiple setups.
I think Victor's a much better actor than I am, that's for sure. But I would prefer that Victor go and, do movies for me. I'll just do the voice.
Prop makers of props and the sets. Great. Looks good. Good luck. It's one of the most beautiful processes I've ever been involved with.